Hello everyone, my name is Saili Kadam. In our previous videos, we discussed different machine learning algorithms and the important concepts which are necessary for machine learning. But then I thought that there are a lot of beginners who are simply studying machine learning for the very first time, and there may be many such terminologies that the person may not know. So, here I am with a video where we will be discussing 15 most important or very basic ML terms. So let us get started. So very important, and the very first definition or the first term that everyone should know, because while training a model, the very first thing that we do is to select a data set. If we don't have a data set, we won't have anything to train, we won't have anything to test on. So when it comes to training a model, dataset is something that is we should know or we must know it. So dataset is nothing but it is the data. It is simply collection of data. So this is the dataset. It is organized in rows and columns like spreadsheets. So basically, when we go for any machine learning code or something, we prefer some of the datasets or the open source datasets, and most of them are in CSV formats. So CSV is nothing but it is quite similar to the Excel format or the spreadsheet format. So that is basically data set. It is nothing but collection of data, and we must know what data set is. And I think we are discussing data sets a lot in every single video. At least once or twice we are speaking about data sets. So everybody knows it, but just to revise, so this is the data set. Then second one is data point. So one single observation in that data set. So data set is a combination of rows and columns. So one data point is basically one row or one information. So let us say if it is a student table, and let us say I am the student. So what will be one data point? So that data point will be like my name, Saili Kadam, which class I am from, which year I am from, and what course, let us say, I am pursuing. So this will be the entire entry. So all of these are features like what is my age or which course I am currently pursuing. So these are the features, and the entire data set or the row, that my name, the course that I am pursuing, and let us say how many hours do I study. So all these are features, and the entire one row that having information of only one single person, that is a data point. And we are again discussing in KNN also, we discuss that we have multiple data points. So data point is again a very basic term that one must know before learning machine learning. Then we have a feature. So as example given by me right now, so as I said that in student table I have my name, which course I am pursuing, how many hours do I study. If you remember one of our previous videos, we discussed that in decision tree, what we discussed that there are two features: the attendance is greater than 75% and how many hours the student studies. So how will the data set look like? So the name of the student, his or her attendance, and then the number of hours he or she studies. So these are the features, that how many hours do they study. So features are basically the things or the characters or characteristics that help us to make the predictions, or they also help us to train the model so that model could make the predictions. So these are the features. So in that data set we discussed this, that in if the attendance is greater than 80% or 75% or not. And then what was the second one? That how many hours the student studies. So these are the features which help us to train the model and make prediction. Those are the features. Then the second one is label. Label is the output. So in supervised learning algorithms, we say that we have labels. So what are exactly the labels? We know what exactly is the output. We have an input, for that we have exact output. So this output is the label. And then, so in supervised learning, we know what is the input, we know what is the output. Again, when we train the model, and after that we want it to predict something. So again, that we can consider as label. So label is nothing but the answer which we are trying to predict. So supervised learning is called as labeled, or we say when somebody asks us to define supervised learning algorithm. So we say that we have a supervised data set, or supervised learning has labeled data set. We say this. So what exactly is the meaning of label? So label is this, that we know its answer, we know the question, and for that particular question, what is the answer? We know everything. So that is label. Then we have very important thing. We have discussed it before, but just to know, for a person who don't know anything, he or she must know what is a training data. So we have a model, we split that into training set and testing set. So to train the model, the data set or the data points which are included for training the model, to teach the model, this is basically the training data. And we have already discussed in one of our previous videos what is exactly a training set and the testing set. So training set is having training data. Training data is used to train the model so that it can make predictions. So this is training data. Then comes the testing data. So again, to evaluate or to test how exactly the model performs on unseen data, or what is the accuracy of the model when it comes to unseen data. In that, to evaluate basically the performance, we perform testing, and testing is done on the testing data. So this is again very important term that one should always know. So these are very basic terms that one must always know before starting, or a very beginner person should know these terms. Then we have train test split. So we have a data set. We have a dedicated video on this, I know, but just to include it, it is a very basic term that a person should know. So train test split, let us say we have a data set having 100 observations. The very common split is 80-20 split. So where what do? We have 80% of the data for training and 20% of the data for testing. So this is the train test split. So the entire data set is divided into two parts, one for training the model and the other for testing the model. This is the train test split, and we, as I already said, we have a dedicated video on this. So if you want to explore more about the train test split or training and testing, how it is done, you can go through that video. Then a very important thing and very basic thing, I would say, that is algorithm. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to train a model so that it could predict, so make some predictions. So algorithm is basic set of some steps that a machine learning model follows to learn. We give it a training set to learn from it, or to come up with the patterns and everything. So to come up with those patterns or to learn those patterns, this machine learning model, it goes through some set of steps. We call these steps as algorithms. So if we give, so there are some concrete rules which are made that if training set is given, this is how the model will perform, or this is how step by step the model will go and it will perform things. So this is basically an algorithm. Okay, the set of steps that a machine learning model follows to learn a pattern from the training data. So training data is given to the model, so it will go through some steps, or it will go through an algorithm, and then it will come up, or it will learn the patterns out of it. So this is the algorithm. Then we have model, very simple thing. We are simply talking about models from the very beginning. So model is basically, we give a data, we train an algorithm on the data which will predict something, which will come up with some predictions, which will come up with some results. So basically a model is a system that is created from after training on a data, and which will make some predictions later. So this is basically model. Then what is a prediction? So prediction is the output that is generated by a model on some data. This is very simple and we are just simply discussing it multiple times. But this video is dedicated to a beginner who don't know anything from machine learning. And then comes very important things, classification and regression. Again, we have a dedicated video on what is classification, what is regression. We have discussed in one of our videos. So if you want really, go through each and everything, you can just go through that video. But what is, just to define, classification is when we have some different classes, we have some different categories, and we are trying to predict to which category it will belong to. And the output, so whatever the categories, like the email is spam or not. So when we have different classes and our result will belong to one of those classes, that is basically classification. The output is categorical, so the output will always be class, it won't be a number. Like in regression we have a numerical value as an output. Here we don't have such value or something. We have different classes and our data point will belong to one of them, and we need to predict to which class it will belong. So classification have classes and we are trying to predict, so which class a new entry or what will be the output of it, we are trying to predict. That is basically classification. We don't have any numerical value as its output. Okay, that is classification. Then again, regression. So regression is, it always gives us a numerical value as an output. We get a number as an output. This is regression. Then class. Okay, so as I gave the same example before a minute, that we predict whether the mail is spam or not. So when we have different categories, animal is this or that, like let us say a student is pass or fail. So we have different classes. So these are the classes. We have different categories where we are trying to classify our data. So we can have multiple classes and we are trying to predict. So when we have classes, we come up with classification. So this is how. So these are basically the labels, or these are categories. Okay. So next we have feature vector. So feature vector is the collection of all the feature values for one single data point. So as the example, we have a student table where we have multiple students. So first is the name, then is the attendance, number of hours the student studies. So all these are the features. So for one particular data point, all the values of the feature. So my name, how many hours do I study, what is my attendance, just for one value or one data point. So that is a feature vector. So all the values of all the features for only one entry. That is, so basically one row, we would say the entire complete one row, that is the feature vector. And then we have accuracy. Okay, so these are some of the important accuracy. What again? So we will be having a dedicated video for all the performance measures that we use. There we will study accuracy in detail, but accuracy is the predicted output, are they really correct? So we have something that is correct. Okay, and then we have something that is, something is mistaken, or let us say the student is pass, and the model also predicts the student is pass. So out of all correct values, how many were actually predicted correctly? So let us say I have 10 people who are pass, and my model is only able to predict that 8 of them are pass. So the accuracy of the model is 80%. So out of all the correct values, how many model is actually able to predict correctly? That is basically accuracy. We are going to study accuracy in detail when it will be our dedicated video for all the performance measures. So this is all for this video, where we discussed the basic terminologies or basic terms that every beginner should know. Again, in upcoming videos, we will be discussing some algorithms and important concepts. So that's all for this video, and thank you.